How does non-state armed group organization classify conflicts? Imagine trying to figure out if a fight is just a street brawl or something more serious like a war. That's exactly what non-state armed groups do when they classify conflicts. They look at two main things: how organized the group is and how intense the fighting is. If a group has a clear command structure, a distinct identity, and can carry out sustained military actions, they are considered sufficiently organized. This means they are not just a loose collection of fighters but a structured group with leadership and goals. Next, they assess how fierce the fighting is. If the violence reaches a certain level of scale, duration, and impact, it qualifies as an armed conflict. Small skirmishes or protests don't count, but ongoing battles with heavy weapons and widespread effects do. When multiple non-state armed groups work together, the classification gets trickier. If they coordinate their efforts against a common enemy, their combined actions might be seen as a single armed conflict, even if each group alone wouldn't meet the criteria. Sometimes, these groups are recognized as national liberation movements under international law. If they are fighting against colonial powers, foreign occupation, or racist regimes, they might be granted special status. This can change how the conflict is viewed and what protections apply. When a state intervenes against a non-state armed group, the situation's classification depends on whether the intervention is with the host country's permission. If the government agrees, it's usually seen as a non-international armed conflict. If the intervention happens without consent, it becomes more complicated but often still falls under the same legal framework. Understanding how non-state armed groups classify conflicts is important because it determines which laws apply. It affects how civilians and fighters are protected and what rules both sides must follow. Proper classification helps ensure that humanitarian principles are respected and that the violence is kept within legal limits. In the end, non-state armed groups classify conflicts by looking at how organized they are and how intense the fighting is. They also consider whether multiple groups are working together and how the conflict fits into international law. This process guides the application of the laws of armed conflict and helps protect those caught in the violence.